Welcome to our channel. Today, we pause to remember a life that touched hearts and left a lasting impact. We'll explore their journey, the challenges they faced, and the moments that made them unforgettable. Join us as we honor their story, celebrate their legacy, and reflect on the memories that will continue to inspire and live on in the hearts of those who knew them. The news arrived quietly. No flashing lights. No dramatic announcement. Just a confirmation that Terrance Gore had passed away, and with it, a pause across the baseball world. For many fans, his name did not appear often on scoreboards. But for those who watched closely, Terrance Gore was unforgettable. He was the player sent in when everything was on the line. When one run mattered more than anything else. Born on June 8, 1991, Gore grew up loving the game in its purest form. Speed came naturally to him, but discipline did not come easily. That was learned. Through repetition, patience, and a willingness to accept a role few dream of, but many teams need. He played college baseball at Gulf Coast Community College. There, he began to understand something important. Not every career is built on spotlight moments. Some are built on preparation for a single pitch, a single step, a single decision. In 2014, Terrance Gore reached the major leagues with the Kansas City Royals. He did not arrive as a star. He arrived as a specialist. A runner trusted in the most fragile moments of a game. Late innings. Tight scores. Stadiums holding their breath. When Gore stepped onto the field, everyone knew why he was there. To run. To disrupt. To change the outcome with his legs. One former Royals coach later said, when Terrance was on base, the whole game felt different. The pressure shifted. That pressure was his gift. Gore became a key part of Kansas City's postseason runs. In October baseball, where every mistake is remembered, he was asked to be perfect. And more often than not, he was. He stole bases that did not appear in highlight reels. But they decided games. They decided seasons. Over the years, Gore continued his career with several major league teams. The Chicago Cubs. The Los Angeles Dodgers. The Atlanta Braves. The New York Mets. Each stop came with the same understanding. He was there because managers trusted him when the margin for error disappeared. Teammates often spoke about his professionalism. About how he stayed ready even when he might not be called upon for days. Sometimes weeks. A former teammate once shared, Terrance prepared like he was starting every night, even when he knew he might only get one chance. That mindset defined him. Off the field, Gore was known as quiet and respectful. He did not chase attention. He did not complain about his role. Instead, he embraced it. Baseball is a sport filled with stars. But it is also built on people who accept sacrifice. People who understand that winning often depends on those willing to stand in the background. Gore understood this better than most. His career statistics may never tell the full story. They cannot capture the tension of those moments. The way crowds rose to their feet when he took his lead off first base. The way pitchers rushed. The way defenses tightened. Fans noticed. After news of his passing, tributes began to appear online. One fan wrote, "Terrance Gore made every close game feel electric. You knew something could happen." Another shared, "He played his role with pride." That matters. His death, confirmed on February 6, 2026, came as a shock to many who remembered him as fast, focused, and full of energy. Details were limited, and the baseball community responded with quiet respect rather than speculation. What followed was remembrance. Analysts spoke about how rare his role was. how few players could handle that pressure. How even fewer could accept it with humility. Gore's journey reminds us that greatness does not always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it waits on the bench. Sometimes it stands at first base, listening for the signal. He showed young players that there is honor in being trusted. That preparation is a form of talent. And that impact is not always measured in home runs or headlines. Terrance Gore will be remembered as a player who changed games without demanding attention. As someone who ran with purpose. As someone who understood his role and fulfilled it with grace. In a sport defined by moments, he lived for the ones that mattered most. And long after the final pitch, his legacy remains, quiet, fast, and forever part of baseball's story. The news felt distant in time, yet close in meaning. And Harding had passed away, and with her went one of the earliest voices that taught Hollywood how to speak. Long before microphones became invisible, before dialogue felt natural on screen, there was uncertainty. Could film survive sound? Could actors trained in silence learn to speak without losing emotion? And Harding was one of the first to answer that question. Born in 1902, she did not begin her career chasing fame. She began chasing craft. The stage came first. Broadway shaped her voice, her timing, and her deep respect for words. By the late 1920s, Hollywood stood at a crossroads. Silent film stars were falling away, one by one. Audiences wanted voices that felt real, not forced. Studios searched for actors who could carry emotion through sound. Harding arrived at the right moment. Her voice was not loud or dramatic. It was calm. Measured. Human. She transitioned into talking pictures with a grace that few achieved. While others struggled, Harding leaned into silence between lines. She understood that meaning lived not just in words, but in pauses. Film critics quickly noticed. So did audiences. In the early 1930s, and Harding became one of Hollywood's most respected dramatic actresses. She appeared in films that demanded restraint rather than spectacle. Stories about love, loss, and inner conflict. One critic wrote at the time, and Harding speaks as real people speak, and feels as real people feel. That realism became her signature. Her performances were often quiet, but never weak. She portrayed women who thought deeply, suffered privately, and carried dignity even in heartbreak. In an era when female roles were often limited, Harding brought depth. She earned an Academy Award nomination, a rare honor in the early sound era. It confirmed what many already believed. She was not just adapting to sound. She was shaping it. Despite her success, Harding avoided Hollywood excess. She valued privacy. She preferred the discipline of work over the noise of celebrity. A fellow actress once said, and never tried to impress the room. She let the work speak. That attitude earned her quiet respect across the industry. As the years passed, Hollywood changed again. New styles emerged. New faces arrived. Harding slowly stepped back from the spotlight. But her influence remained. Film historians often credit her as a bridge between two worlds. The emotional control of silent cinema. And the spoken realism of modern film. She proved that sound did not have to overpower feeling. That dialogue could deepen it. When news of her death spread, tributes focused not on fame, but on contribution. On how difficult that transition had been. And how few succeeded the way she did. One film historian reflected, without performers like Harding, sound cinema might have lost its soul. It was a simple statement. But an honest one. Her work continues to be studied by actors and scholars alike. Not for grand gestures. But for restraint. for listening, for emotional truth. And Harding helped teach Hollywood how to slow down, how to let characters breathe, how to trust the audience. She belonged to a generation that risked everything during a technological shift. And she emerged not louder, but clearer. In the end, her legacy is not tied to one film or one line. It lives in every performance that values sincerity over spectacle. In every moment where silence speaks as loudly as words. And Harding will be remembered as a pioneer. A steady voice in a noisy transition. A woman who carried the soul of the stage into the future of film. And long after the screens went silent, her voice continued to echo, softly, honestly, and forever human. The confirmation came softly, carried through quiet headlines and stunned messages. Bradley Kirk Arnold had passed away, and the silence that followed felt unfamiliar. For a voice that had filled rooms, cars, and long nights, the absence felt heavy. He was known first as a sound. A rough edge layered with honesty. A voice that did not pretend to be perfect, but real. Born and raised in Mississippi, Bradley Arnold grew up surrounded by small-town rhythms and hard truths. Music was not an escape for him. It was a mirror. A way to face what hurt and still keep moving forward. Before the lights and the stages, there were practice rooms and borrowed equipment. There were long drives and uncertain futures. Arnold sang not to impress, but to release what he carried inside. That honesty became the foundation of Three Doors Down. When the band began to find its audience, it was clear something different was happening. Their songs spoke plainly. About faith that wavered. About pain that stayed. About strength found one day at a time. Arnold's voice led those stories. Not polished. Not distant. But close enough to feel personal. As the band's reach grew, arenas filled and records sold. Yet the tone never changed. He sang as if he were still speaking to one person who needed to hear it. One longtime fan later wrote, "Bradley sang the things I couldn't say out loud. His voice got me through nights I didn't think I'd survive." Messages like that followed him throughout his career. Success brought pressure, and pressure brought struggle. Arnold never hid that truth. He spoke openly about faith, doubt, and the work of staying grounded. In interviews, he often returned to one idea. That music should help people feel less alone. A fellow musician once said, "Bradley didn't perform at people. He stood with them." That connection defined his presence on stage. Through hits that climbed charts and ballads that slowed time, his voice remained steady. It carried weight because it came from lived experience. Listeners heard themselves in it. As years passed, his role grew beyond singer. He became a point of reference. Someone whose songs marked moments of survival, recovery, and reflection. When news of his death spread, tributes appeared across social media. Not just from artists and public figures, but from everyday people. One post read, "Your songs walked with me through loss and faith. Thank you for never pretending." Another simply said, "You made pain feel shared." Details surrounding his passing were met with respect and restraint. Fans focused not on how he died, but on how he lived. And what he gave. Bradley Arnold's legacy is not only found in records or awards. It lives in late-night drives. In hospital waiting rooms. In quiet prayers and loud sing-alongs. He showed that strength could sound broken and still be powerful. That belief could coexist with doubt. That healing did not have to be loud to be real. His voice carried a generation because it never talked down to them. It walked beside them. And though the music has now grown quiet, the meaning remains. In every lyric remembered. in every life steadied by his sound. Bradley Kirk Arnold will be remembered not just as a singer, but as a companion in difficult moments. A voice that stayed when others faded. And one that continues to echo, wherever people listen, hope, and endure. The confirmation came without spectacle. Fred Smith had passed away, and the news settled slowly across the music world. There were no loud headlines. Just a quiet understanding that something foundational was gone. He was never the loudest voice in the room. That was never his role. Fred Smith worked beneath the surface, where music finds its shape before it finds its sound. Born into a time of change, Smith came of age as rock music was beginning to fracture. The old rules no longer held. Young musicians searched for something leaner, sharper, more honest. In New York City, that search found a home. The clubs were small. The stages were dim. But the ideas were large. Fred Smith became a founding member of Television, a band that did not rush to please. They slowed rock music down. They stripped it back. His bass lines were not meant to dominate. They were meant to hold space. While guitars stretched and twisted, Smith stayed steady. He understood tension. He understood restraint. One fellow musician later said, "Fred knew when not to play." That was his genius. In a scene built on rebellion, that choice was quietly radical. Television's music became a blueprint for what followed. Punk. New wave. Alternative rock. Yet Smith never chased recognition. Around the same time, he contributed early work with Blondie. Again, his presence was subtle. Again, it mattered. Those bass lines helped shape a sound that balanced edge with clarity. They gave songs room to breathe. They gave voices a place to land. A music historian once noted, Fred Smith didn't push music forward by force. He let it move on its own. That approach defined his career. As scenes changed and bands evolved, Smith remained selective. He valued integrity over visibility. Process over praise. He did not flood interviews. He did not explain his influence. Instead, he trusted the work. In the years that followed, his contributions were often recognized quietly by those who understood. Musicians spoke of him with respect. With gratitude. One former bandmate shared, "Fred believed the song was bigger than any one player." That belief shaped every note he played. When news of his death spread, tributes came from across generations. Not loud messages. Thoughtful ones. Fans wrote about discovering television late at night. About hearing those bass lines and feeling something shift. One message read, "Fred Smith taught me that silence can be powerful." Another simply said, "Thank you for the space you left in the music." Details surrounding his passing were met with dignity. There was no rush to define the moment. Only a desire to honor the work. Fred Smith's legacy lives in the margins. In the pauses between notes. In the confidence to hold back. He showed that rebellion did not always need volume. That influence did not need explanation. That music could be strong without shouting. Today, countless artists carry traces of his approach. They may not know his name at first. But they know the feeling. The feeling of tension held just long enough. Of restraint that deepens emotion. Of space that invites meaning. Fred Smith helped build the foundation for modern rock without demanding attention for it. He stood behind the sound and trusted it to speak. And now, as the music continues, his presence remains. In every band that values feel over flash. In every song that knows when to pause. Fred Smith will be remembered not as a star, but as a force. Quiet. steady, essential. And in the silence he respected so deeply, his influence plays on, unseen, but never unheard.